I always thought they simply didn't recognize me. Turns out, they chose someone else. The mirrored twin. She was walking down a narrow street in the center of Bern, where the shop windows were so low it felt like the stores were designed for dolls. The streets looked quiet, like the set of a morning shoot. No sound, no movement. After the wet snow, the glass reflected more light than reality. Marianne walked quickly, her gaze lowered, until she stopped. In the window of a bookstore, she saw herself. At first, she assumed it was just a reflection. Then, a prank. The woman on the poster was looking straight at the camera. High forehead, a faint mole near the lips, dark eyes with a drop of doubt. It all felt familiar enough to tremble. Only the posture was different, and the scarf in her hair, like an accent Marianne would never wear. Below the photograph, a caption read, Eva Steiner, author of Die andere Seite von mir. She stepped closer. Not a single blurred line. Even the hands were the same, with a barely visible scar at the base of the thumb. Marianne reached out and touched the glass, as if hoping it might return some warmth. On the shelf below the poster were dozens of copies of the book. Black covers with white embossing. The title translated as The Other Side of Me. Inside the store, someone was moving a ladder. Marianne stepped back, as though caught doing something intimate. She walked on, but the thought pulsing inside her couldn't be shoved away. What if it's not just a resemblance? Later that night in her hotel room, she opened her laptop. The search took seconds. Eva Steiner, best-selling author, born in Kassel, adopted as an infant, lives in Hamburg. Marianne froze. On the screen was her face, only in someone else's past. She read the book in one night. Sitting in a chair by the window of the small hotel room, Marianne barely moved. Not because she was tired. She was afraid to miss something between the lines. She wasn't just reading, she was listening, as if leafing through someone else's memories that somehow hurt inside her. The courtyard, with the peeling blue fence. The little girl hiding under the stairs when adults shouted. The line, if you stay silent too long, the words begin to sting from the inside. The author wrote in the first person, but the voice, that voice, sounded like her own. On the last page, a brief biography, Eva Steiner, born in Kassel, adopted at age 1, studied in Zurich, now lives between Hamburg and Vienna. Marianne placed the book on her lap. Same woman as in the poster, same jawline, same arch of the brows. Only the hairstyle was different, and the confidence. And suddenly a memory surfaced. You're too ordinary to be interesting. A phrase tossed by a friend at university, a trivial thing, but it stuck, like a stain on the inner wall. Since then, Marianne had feared being ridiculous in her desires. That's why she never sent the manuscript, never showed her sketches. Even her childhood journal, started at age 8, remained blank after page 3. The fear of sounding misplaced was stronger than the need to be heard. She stood up, went to her suitcase, and pulled out an old folder. Inside, certificates, a Polaroid, and a letter from the orphanage. Child found at station, no identifying documents. Name, M. Marianne had long avoided that document, but now she unfolded it completely and saw what she had missed before. There is reason to believe there was a second child. She returned to the chair, placed the book beside the unfinished childhood journal. It wasn't just a book. It was someone's life, printed in the font of her silence. Marianne stood by the glass doors, watching people walk in. A soft murmur of voices, light from the spotlights, posters at the entrance. It all felt like a stage she wasn't sure she belonged on. What am I doing here? Do I really want to know? She took a deep breath and stepped into the hall. Eva appeared on stage right on time. 6 p.m. Marianne sat near the middle, enough to see but stay unnoticed. The room was simple. White walls, a hanging mic, the book cover on screen. Everything looked curated. So did she. Eva walked in wearing a navy blue dress, her hair tied back, a book in hand. She spoke calmly, almost distantly. In her voice, polite confidence, as if every word had already been said before. People smiled, some jotted down quotes. Marianne didn't follow the meaning. She was watching the gestures. How Eva held the book with her left hand. How she avoided direct eye contact. How during each pause she touched her temple. During the break, Marianne pretended to read a flyer. Eva stood by a table of books. Someone approached. She smiled politely, but her gaze drifted, like into a room where no one lived. Then came a moment, barely visible. A woman from the team handed Eva a form. In the line, "How do you experience loneliness?" Eva paused, then swiftly tore the page in half. No anger, no comment, just a gesture, quick and precise. Marianne felt something strange. The envy she'd started with hadn't vanished, but it had changed. A crack appeared in the reflection, and something else began to seep through. Not pity, not relief, something closer to understanding or foreboding. Marianne came to the house near evening, when the streets glowed faintly from storefronts and windows began to come alive. The address had been mentioned in an old interview. Eva had offhandedly called it the place I return to when I need to disappear. The building looked ordinary, weathered facade, modest entryway, nameplates without doorbells. Marianne didn't know which floor. She was about to leave when a man in a delivery jacket appeared by the door. He glanced around, saw her, then hesitantly approached. "Excuse me, are you from Frau Steiner?" He handed over a small package. "She usually doesn't answer, but maybe you can leave it by her door." Marianne nodded automatically. "Second floor, on the left. There's always a light on." He left. Marianne remained with the box in her hands and a strange sense that the role had chosen her, not the other way around. She walked up to the door. Light spilled from behind a curtain. Marianne pressed the bell. Once, twice, silence, and then the click of a lock. Eva opened the door. She wore a house cardigan, her hair down, her face calm, almost indifferent. "You? From where?" Marianne didn't know what to say. "I just wanted to talk." A pause, then Eva stepped aside. 5 minutes, I don't expect visitors." The apartment was unsettlingly tidy. White walls, a glass table, books in perfect rows. Along the hallway, several mirrors, different sizes, no frames, as if embedded in the air. Eva noticed her gaze. "Writing is strange. You stare inward too long. Sometimes you need to remember what you look like from the outside." Marianne nodded but said nothing. Everything felt too clean, too staged, like a set arranged for a role someone had played too long. Eva spoke about the book, the publisher, deadlines, but her voice skimmed over the words. Marianne listened, but heard the silence between them. The truth wasn't in the reflections. It was in what lay behind them. "I'm not a journalist," said Marianne. Eva froze halfway to the kettle. The lid dangled from her fingers, a faint clink, like a drop against glass. She set it down and turned. "Then who are you?" Marianne walked to the table and unfolded a photograph. 2 infants on a blanket. The faces were unclear, but the mole on one, identical to hers, and Eva's. "I think we were born together." Eva didn't take the photo immediately. She sat down, brushed her knee with her hand as if wiping off dust. Only then did she carefully reach for the picture, squinting. "I have—" She got up without finishing. Vanished down the hallway. Marianne heard drawers opening. A creak. Papers. Eva returned with a box, set it on the table. Without looking at Marianne, she sifted through its contents. Letters, tags, scraps. She paused at one. The paper was thin, yellowed. Eva unfolded it, traced the lines with her finger, as if remembering rather than reading. "Choose one. I can't take both." Her fingers trembled. Marianne looked away. She stared at the floor as though it might offer an explanation. "All my childhood," Eva began, then swallowed the words, fell silent. "Sometimes you memorize someone else's script, and it sounds like yours. But you know, it's not your part. They just cast you first." She took 2 old keys from the windowsill, nearly identical worn heads, placed them on the table. "Sometimes you think one leads out, and then you forget which door you came from." Marianne said nothing. Then softly, I always thought they just didn't recognize me. Turns out, they chose someone else. Eva nodded but didn't lift her gaze. She only placed her palm over one of the keys and said nothing more. They sat on the floor, backs to the wall. Between them, a blanket Eva had pulled from the closet without looking. The fabric was old with a faded diamond pattern, smelling of paper dust and something childlike. It was past midnight. Outside, the quiet glow of street lamps reflected in the window. Marianne held a cup from the table, white ceramic, darkened with age. On the side, the words, Leben ist Leihen, life is borrowed. I kept thinking, she said, not looking at Eva, that if I'd been the one chosen, everything would be different. More freedom, more confidence. Maybe I'd write too. Or at least, not feel so accidental. Eva leaned back, clutching the blanket to her chest. And I envied those who could disappear, people who didn't have to be someone. I felt like if I slipped, everything would collapse, like I'd been holding the roof up with my hands the whole time. They fell silent. Marianne examined the cup, touched the hairline crack running through the handle. Are you going to stay? Eva asked. No, said Marianne. I think it's time I learned to be myself, even if it doesn't sound like a novel. She stood, pulled a business card from her pocket, and placed it on the edge of the table. Paused, then gently wiped her name away, leaving only the initials. Eva didn't say a word, just nodded slightly, as if agreeing with something that didn't need to be spoken. Marianne left before dawn. The hallway was cold, but light. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't wondering who might be watching her. The letter arrived without a stamp or return address. Just lying at the door, a thin gray envelope. Inside, a postcard. No text, just a drawing. A mirror, painted in watercolor. Rectangular, frameless, slightly warped, like the surface of water. A fine crack ran down the glass, barely visible, like a scar from something long gone. Marianne placed the postcard on a shelf next to a self-portrait, the one she had once drawn from memory, without a mirror. Just the lines she felt from within. She didn't know if Eva had sent it or someone else, but that no longer mattered. She no longer searched for resemblance, no longer asked who was stronger, who was lucky, who was lost. All those comparisons now sounded like a foreign language she had stopped understanding. Life went on, without revelations. Same routines, same streets, same quiet habit of not speaking the important things aloud. But something inside had grown quieter, as if the background trembling had faded. Sometimes she still caught herself comparing, on the subway, in the news, in passing faces. But now she noticed it, and didn't scold herself, just let it go. At night before bed, she blew out a candle. The light skimmed over the postcard and the mirror shimmered with one final glint. Marianne looked at the reflection. She saw her face again, but this time not as a question, as a fact.